Hello, you're welcome back. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing right now as it will help the channel grow. Thank you. So in this video, I'm going to be showing you how you can use relative and absolute references in Excel. Okay, and this is important when you want to control whether a cell reference in a formula that you copy can change. Okay. That is in terms of the formula, whether the formula will change when you copy it to another cell. And we have three different types of this. We have the relative, the absolute, and the mixed. So for the relative, when we copy to other cells, the cell reference in the formula will change relative to both the columns and the rows that are being copied to. Okay. While when we use absolute, it remains the same and fixed. So there's no change relative to either the column or the row. When we now use mixed, what we're trying to do with mixed is that we're specifying whether we want there to be a change in the row or a change in the column when we copy, but not in both. Okay? And we're going to see this with this data set. So we have our product, quantity, and price, and we want to calculate the total using relative formula. So what we want to do is, when we multiply this first quantity and price and copy down, we want it to be that it will be able to refer to the next based on what we have under. Okay, so for the first quantity that we have, it's B5 and C5. So when we're using relative referencing, we want it to be able to recognize that the next, that which is now for banana, should be B6 and C6. And that is what relative referencing will do for us, unlike the other types of referencing. So let's see this in practice. So if we start with an equal sign and then our B5 and multiply by C5 and enter, then we copy down. We copy this down. You'll see that when we click on this, it's referring, the B6 is now multiplying C6. And for this one, B7 is multiplying C7. Okay? And that is just what we want. We want, using this, our first example, the order should recognize what we want as our output. Now, this is just the same thing for this row total, okay? So we just do the same thing we did here, which is B12 in this case, multiplied by C12, and we copy it down. However, in this other column, we want to account for our tax rate, okay? We want to account for tax here. So what we want to do now is, this is our tax rate. We want to account for tax. So we are not going to use the same relative referencing, because if we use relative referencing here, for example, let me show you, equal to our row total, and we'll multiply by tax rate. Okay. If we copy down, you're going to see what we have. You're going to see. So it's referring to G6 here, instead of just focusing on G5, since the only tax rate that we have here is 1.1. And the only thing is, either we now start having multiple of 1.1 down, but this is not actually what we want. It will not make our work look nice. So what we'll do is clear this. And then equal to this D12 multiplied by, so what we use here will now be an absolute reference. of the G5. So if we click on G5, we can either use F4 to change to absolute value, absolute reference, or we decide to use $ in front of the G and the 5, but this will take longer. So what we just use is the F4. So once you click on F4, you see it's giving us the absolute referencing, which is this $ in front of G and $ after 5. So we click on OK. And if we drag this, we are not going to encounter any challenge since it's multiplying the reference. Okay, so it is fixed. It multiplies fixed this 1.1. Another thing that we'll look at is the mixed referencing. So mixed referencing, it will actually change based on the row or the column, depending on the specification that we make. So you can see for relative, both the row and the column will change, okay, relative to what we are copying to. For the absolute, the row and the column will not change because we are using a fixed value, okay? While for our relative, our mix, for the mixed, the row or the column will change based on what we specify. So what we want to get here is the area of these rectangles. So we have rectangles with length 5, 6, and 7, with 2, 3, and 4. And we want to get the areas for each of them. So the first one that we have here is for this 5. And in order to make this possible, we are only going to use this, we are going to use the mixed referencing. So to use mixed referencing for this, we are going to start with our equal sign. Then we click on the length first, okay? Now, we want to be able to copy across. So if we are copying across, it means the next should be D and the next should be E. However, our row should be same, okay? Our row should be same, but the column should change since we are copying across. Hence, we use F9 to make this possible, F4 to make this possible. So when I click on F4, the first thing that appears is the absolute, but it's not the absolute that I want. I click on it again, and then I'm having what I want. I want the 19 fixed, but the C to be relative so that it can be copied across. So if I click on this and multiply by, for the 2, okay, I want the 2 to be able to be copied down. It should be referred down and not across, okay? That means I'm going to fix my B, but make my 20 relative so that it can be copied to 21 and copied to 22. That's what I will do. So I'll use F4 to adjust this. So you can see my B is now fixed, but my 20 is relative. So if I click on OK, I have 10 here. And when I copy across, I'm having the areas for each of them. And I can now copy it down again. So you can see 5 by 2 is 10, 6 by 2 is 12, 5 by 3 is 15, and so on. And that is it. This is just how we can demonstrate how to use relative absolute referencing in Excel. And I hope you're able to find this video helpful. Please, if you were, kindly like the video, share, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.